Daf Yomi, Tractate Zevachim, page 116a, top of the page. We're getting very close to completing the tractate. Spent the past few months here, and Zevachim has been interesting. I've never learned the tractate before, and thanks to Daf Yomi, I was able to get familiar with this tractate over the past, say, since September. Okay, top of the page, from the words Zevachim unikevot. Zevachim unikevot temiminu balemumin demarmar temuz v'zacharus b'vei b'vein tamuz v'zacharus b'oifois. That which was taught in the Braita, all animals were fit to be sacrificed, males and females, unblemished and blemished animals, pertains to that which the Master said as a principle concerning the halachot of sacrifices, the requirements that an offering must have unblemished status and that a burnt offering must have male status apply to animal offerings, but the requirements of unblemished status and the male status do not apply to birds. The itakash behemanov, and the verses that recount Noah's sacrifices upon exiting the ark, a domesticated animal is juxtaposed with a bird in the verse of every pure animal and of every pure fowl, Genesis 8:20. Which teaches that kosher animals had a status identical to that of birds and could be sacrificed whether male or female, blemished or unblemished or blemished. Timiminu balemumin lapokim mechusarever Dila amar Rabbi Lozo minayin mechusar evar שנעשה לבני נוח תלמוד לומר מכל חי מכל בשר אמרה תורה הווה בהמה שחיין ראש איברים שלה. The Gemara adds, that which was taught in the Braita, unblemished and blemished animals, serves to exclude animals that are lacking a limb, which are not fit for sacrifice. As Rabbi Elazar says, from where is it derived that an animal that is lacking a limb is forbidden to the descendants of Noah, meaning Gentiles, to be used as a sacrifice? The verse states with regard to Noah, and every living being of all flesh, two of every sort shall you bring into the ark, Genesis 6:19. With regard to the phrase and every living being, and of every living being which is superfluous, the Torah stated, bring an animal whose limbs are all living, not one lacking a limb, as that animal is disqualified from sacrifice. The Gemara challenges, but perhaps this phrase, and of every living being, serves to exclude an animal with a wound that will cause it to die within 12 months, treifa, from being fit as a sacrifice. The Gemara explains the disqualification of a treifa is derived from the phrase to keep seed alive, Genesis 7:3, as a treifa cannot propagate. I don't see why not. If something has a damage, it's lung, it can't propagate. I don't see whether. Well, we're going to see that. I think this is machlokes, but I don't understand why there would be a man damar saying otherwise. But anyway, here's what it says: Hanich laman damar treifa enu yoledes enu laman damar treifa yoledes. Ma'igla meimar hamar kra itach bedomin lach. The Gemara challenges this. This works out well according to the one who says that a treifa cannot give birth. In this case, the disqualification of the treifa is derived from the verse to keep seed alive. While The disqualification of the animal lacking a limb is derived from the verse in every living being, and of every living being. But according to the one who says that a treifa can give birth, what can be said? According to his opinion, a treifa cannot be excluded from the phrase keep seed alive. The Gemara explains, doesn't the verse state with regard to the animals that were brought by Noah into the ark, you shall bring into the ark to keep them alive with you? Genesis 6:19. The term with you indicates that the verse is stated with regard to animals that are similar to you, not a treifa. The Gemara asks, but perhaps Noah himself was a treifa. If so, one cannot exclude a treifa from the comparison of animals to Noah. The Gemara answers, it is written about Noah that he was complete, Genesis 6, verse 9, which indicates that he was physically whole and unblemished. The Gemara challenges, but perhaps the verse means that his ways were complete, and it's not referring to Noah's physical attributes. The Gemara explains, it is already written about him that he was righteous, Genesis 6:9, which means that his actions were perfect. Consequently, when the verse says that he was complete, it must be referring to his body, or else it would be redundant. The thing is, tamim can also mean wholesome. It doesn't have to mean only complete. But anyway, we'll just leave it as it is. I mean, when it says Yaakov was ish tam, Yoshev Ali, what means he's complete? You know what I mean? Simple. I mean, B'dilma tamim b'derachav, v'chasid b'ma'asav. Okay, the Gemara is asking that. Something like that. The Gemara challenges this. But perhaps the verse means that Noah was complete in his manner and he was righteous in his good deeds. Accordingly, the verse would not exclude the possibility that Noah himself was a treifa. The Gemara responds to this, if it enters your mind, to say that Noah himself was a treifa, would the merciful one have said to him, bring in treifot like you into the ark, but do not bring in whole and perfect animals? It is not reasonable to say that there would be a preference for him to bring treifot. Rather, Noah was certainly not a treifa, and the fact that a treifa is disqualified for sacrifice is derived from the words "with you." The Gemara asks, and once we derive the disqualification of a treifa from the term "with you," why do I need the phrase to keep seed alive? The Gemara answers, if one could derive only from with you, you would say that Noah brought the animals to the ark only for the purpose of companionship. And therefore, even an animal that is old or even one who is castrated can come into the ark, provided that it is not a treifa. Therefore, the merciful one writes, to keep the seed alive, which teaches that only animals that can bear offspring were allowed to be brought into the ark, and the rest, unfortunately, were wiped out. Tehoirin avalo timein, umi hava timein tehoirin mahi shata amar shmo banachmani amar b'yonatan me'otan shelo nevda behen avecho. The bride also teaches that before the tabernacle was constructed, sacrifices were brought from animals and birds that were kosher, but not from non-kosher species. This is based on the verse that describes what Noah sacrificed when he exited the ark. And he took of every pure animal, and a very pure fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. Genesis 8:20. The Gemara asks, and were there pure and impure species at that time during the period of Noah? The distinction between pure, meaning kosher species, and impure, non-kosher species, was introduced only after the Torah was given. See Leviticus chapter 11. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani says that Rabbi Yonatan says the pure animals that Noah took were from those that had not been used in the performance of sin. Mina havayadi gerav chizda gerav chizda heavy on the neateva kol sheteva kol atan biadua shehutoy ein ateva kol atan biadua shen temein. The Gemara asks, from where did Noah and his sons know which animals had been used in the performance of a sin in order to prevent them from entering in the ark? The Gemara answers that it is in accordance with the statement of Rav Chizda. As Rav Chizda says, Noah caused all the animals to pass before the ark. All animals that the ark accepted, meaning drew in, was known to be pure. If the ark did not accept them, it was known that they were impure. Rabbi Abahu says there is a different explanation as to how Noah knew which animals were pure or impure. The verse states, and they that went in, male and female of all flesh. Genesis 7:16, which means those that went in on their own. Consequently, Noah did not need to distinguish between pure and impure animals, as only the pure ones approached. Okay, even better, even easier. Amar Mar, v'akol korvoi lo yisrael esin, shlamim lo, v'aksiv yisrael zevachim shlamim l'Hashem parim, Elohim kol korvoi lo yisrael shlamim. In describing the sacrificial service before the tabernacle was constructed, the Master said, and all offerings brought before the construction of the tabernacle were sacrificed as burnt offerings. The Gemara infers burnt offerings, yes, were sacrificed, but peace offerings were not sacrificed. The Gemara challenges, but with regard to the offerings that were sacrificed at Mount Sinai at the time of the giving of the Torah, it is written, and they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings of oxen to the Lord. Exodus 24, verse 5. This event occurred prior to the construction of the tabernacle. Rather, say that the Braita means all offerings sacrificed were neither burnt offerings or peace offerings. Ve'atanya v'shlamim lo im oilois in shlamim lo kiman de'amar lo kolvu shlamim b'nei Noach de'it mal Rabbi Elazar v'Yosi bar Chanina Chadamar keru shlamim b'nei Noach Chadamar lo keru. Okay. The Gemara challenges, and isn't it taught in another Braita the peace offerings were not sacrificed before the construction of the tabernacle, rather only burnt offerings were sacrificed? Clearly burnt offerings, yes, were sacrificed, but peace offerings were not sacrificed. The Gemara answers, and this Braita is in accordance with the opinion of the one who says that peace offerings were not sacrificed by the descendants of Noah. And as it was stated, that there is a dispute between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina with regard to this. Excuse me. With regard to this, one says that the descendants of Noah sacrificed peace offerings, and one says that they did not sacrifice peace offerings. My time in the Manyam, I got a shlam in the Noach, did Steve Hevel, heavy gam who, big hoy rois. So you know him, Michel Behen, Ezehu Davar Shechel Boykar, the Gam Mizbeach, Ve'en Kulo Korev Gam Mizbeach, Havi Omer the Shlamim. Okay. Wow, this is a big daf, man. Okay, let's go. This is what you signed up for. Keep it rolling. Keep the film rolling. Havi oimer zushlami. The Gemara explains the two opinions. What is the reasoning of the one who says the descendants of Noah sacrificed peace offerings? As it is written in Abel, he also brought the firstborn of his flock and the fat thereof. Genesis 4:4. Abel, like all the Gentiles, is categorized as a descendant of Noah. Even though he's much older than Noah, but he was in the same category. Okay? The verse emphasizes that the fat was sacrificed. The Gemara analyzes what is an item, meaning an offering, the fat of which is sacrificed upon the altar, but that is not sacrificed in its entirety upon the altar. You must say, this is the peace offering, the meat of which is consumed. My time in the Monday Amalo Kero receive Uritza Funevoy Teman Titnauma Shima Seb Savin with Avoma Shima Seb Savin Overdahum. What is the reason of the one who says that they did not sacrifice peace offerings? Just one moment. Take a brief pause here. Okay, we're back. What is the reasoning of the one who says that they did not sacrifice peace offerings? As is written, awake, O north, and come south. Let my beloved come into his garden and eat his precious fruits. Song of Songs 4:16. It's the verse Uri Tzafon Voy Teman. Okay. The Gemara interprets this homiletically. The nation, meaning the nations of the world who are descendants of Noah, whose acts or sacrifices are only in the north, meaning that they sacrifice only burnt offerings, which are slaughtered and their blood collected in the north of the temple courtyard, shall be removed, titnaer, and in its place shall come the Jewish nation, whose acts, meaning sacrifices, are in the north and in the south, as they sacrifice burnt offerings, whose rites are performed in the north, and peace offerings, whose rites may also be performed in the south, as the entire courtyard is fit for their rites. Umar nami ichtiv michel ben mishmanehon ninehu. The Gemara asks, and also according to the master who holds that the descendants of Noah did not sacrifice peace offerings, isn't it written? And of the fat thereof, from which it may be derived that Abel sacrificed a peace offering. The Gemara answers, the fat thereof does not mean that Abel sacrificed only the fats of his offerings. Rather, it means he sacrificed the fattest of them. In other words, the fattest and the choicest of his animals. Umar Sav Marnami. The Gemara asks, and also according to the master who holds that the descendants of Noah did sacrifice peace offerings, isn't it written, awake, O north? From which it may be derived that the nations of the world do not sacrifice peace offerings. The Gemara answers, in his opinion, that verse is written with regard to the ingathering of the exiles, meaning the Jewish exiles will come from the north and south, and has nothing to do with peace offerings or not. Okay? Zevachim ve'orot asinu Hashem Elokeinu de Zevachim lachin le'oil le'sekravo. With regard to the opinion that the descendants of Noah did not sacrifice peace offerings, the Gemara asks, but isn't it written, and Moses said, you must also give into our hand sacrifices, Zevachim, and burnt offerings, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. Exodus 10:25. This indicates that sacrifices, Zevachim, meaning peace offerings were sacrificed before the Torah was given. The Gemara answers in this context, Zevachim is referring to animals to be used for consumption, as the word Zevach can be translated as an animal for slaughter, and burnt offerings is referring to animals to be used for sacrifice. Okay. V'ha'ketiv v'yikach yitro choten Moshe ola uzvachim hahu le'achar matan Torah u'ketiv. But the Gemara asks, but isn't it written, before the giving of the Torah, Yitro, Moses' father-in-law, took a burnt offering and sacrifices Zevachim for God? Exodus 18:12. Since the word Zevachim there is referring to sacrifices, as the verse clearly states that Yitro took them for God, evidently peace offerings were sacrificed before the giving of the Torah. The Gemara answers that verse was written with regard to the period after the giving of the Torah, when the Jewish people were permitted to sacrifice peace offerings. Okay? Bam. Wow. Hani Laman Damar Yisro Achar Matan Toirav. Hi. Elaman Yamar Yisro Kod Matan Toirav Ma'ek Lemema. Diit Ma Bene Chia Berabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. Chadama Yitro Kod Matan Torah Haya. Chadama Yitro Achar Matan Torah Haya. Laman Damar Yisro Kod Matan Torah Haya. Kasav Shlamim Yikirivu Bnei Noach. The Gemara notes this works out well according to the one who says that the episode with Yitro was after the giving of the Torah. But according to the one who says that the episode with Yitro was before the giving of the Torah, what can be said? Okay. Going back to... where were we? Let's go back to the part where it says this works out well. The Gemara notes that this works out well. This works out well according to the one who says that episode with Yitro was after the giving of the Torah. But according to the one who says that the episode with Yitro was before giving of the Torah, what can be said? As it was stated, the sons of Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi engaged in a dispute concerning this issue. One says that the episode with Yitro was before giving of the Torah, and one says that the episode with Yitro was after the giving of the Torah. The Gemara answers, the one who says that the episode with Yitro was before the giving of the Torah maintains that the descendants of Noah did, in fact, and indeed, sacrifice peace offerings. Ketanai veishma Yitro kohen Midian מה שמוע שמע ובא ונתגאה רבי יהושע אומר מלחמת עמלק שמע שערי כתיב בצידום ויחלוש יהושע את עמלק ואת עמו לפי חרב. The Gemara notes that the disagreement between Amoraim with regard to when Yitro came to Mount Sinai is like a dispute between Tanaim. The Gemara states with regard to Yitro before he came to Mount Sinai. Now Yitro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard all that God had done for Moses and for Israel, his people, how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt, Exodus 18:1. What tiding did he hear that he came and converted? Rabbi Yehoshua says he heard about the war with Amalek, as it is written adjacent to the verses that state Yitro came. And Joshua weakened Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. Exodus 17:13. Rabbi Elazar HaModai Omer Matan Torah Shema Uba Shekin Keshenitna Torah L'Israel Hayakol Holech Misof HaOlam Ad Sofo B'Kol Machet Umos Ha'olam Achazatan Ra'adam Behechalehan Ve'amar Shira Shneimar Behechalo Kulo Omer Kavod. Rabbi Elazar HaModa'ah says he heard about the giving of the Torah and came. And when the Torah was given to the Jewish people, the voice of the Holy One, blessed be He, went from one end of the world to the other end, and all the kings of the nations of the world were overcome with trembling in their palaces, and recited a song of praise, as it is stated, the voice of the Lord makes the hinds to cow. And in His palace all say glory. Psalms 29 verse 9. Meaning each king in his own palace recited songs of praise to God. נתקבצו כולם אצל בלעם הרשע ואמרו לו מה כל המון אשר שמענו שם המבול בא לעולם אמרו להם השם למבול ישב אמרו להם וישב השם מלך לעולם כבר נשמע הקדוש ברוך הוא שאינו מביא מבול לעולם. And at that time, all the kings gathered around Bilam, the wicked, who was the greatest Gentile prophet, and said to him, "What is the tumultuous sound?" Meaning that loud noise that we have heard. Perhaps a flood is coming to destroy the world. As it is stated, the Lord enthroned at the flood. Psalms 29:10. Bilam said to them, "The Lord sits as king forever." Psalms 29:10, which means that the Holy One, blessed be, already took an oath after the flood never to bring a flood to the world, as it is stated, and the waters shall no more become a flood. Genesis 9:15. אמרו לו, מבול של מים אינו מביא, אבל מבול של אש מביא, שנאמר, כי הנה באש השם נשפט. אמר להם, כבר נשבע שאינו משחית כל בשר. The king said to him, he will not bring a flood of water as he vowed, but perhaps he will bring a flood of fire. As in the future, the Lord will punish the nations with fire, as it is stated, for by fire will the Lord contend, and by His word will all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many. Isaiah 66:16. Bilam said to them, he already took an oath that he will not destroy all flesh in any manner, as it is stated, to destroy all flesh, Genesis 9:15. Therefore, there will not be a flood of fire. Uma kol hamon hazeh sheshemanu lehem chemda tova yesh lo bevet genazav shaya genuza etzlo 974 dorot kodem shnivra ha'olam וביקש תתנה לבניו שנאמר שמוזלמו ייתן. מיד פתחו כולם ואמרו השם יברך את עמו בשלום. And they asked, "It is so? What is this tumultuous sound that we have heard?" Bilam said to them, "He has a good and precious item in his treasury that was hidden away with him for 974 generations before the world was created." I wonder what that means, 974 generations. If there wasn't any world, how do you have a generation? Maybe it's just a generic amount of time. Generation is like 40 years, whatever. Okay. Or something like that. and he seeks to give it to his children, as it is stated, the Lord will give strength to his people, Psalms 29, verse 11. Strength is a reference to the Torah, which is the strength of the Jewish people. Immediately they all began to say, the Lord will bless his people with peace. Psalms 29:11. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Kriyas Yam Suf Shema ובא, שנאמר, ויהי כשמוע כל מלכי האמורי, ואף רחב הזונה אמרה לשלוחי יהושע, כי שמענו את אשר הוביש השם את מי ים סוף. The Gemara offers another explanation that Yitro heard. Rabbi Eliezer says, he heard about the splitting of the sea and came. As it is stated in a similar context with regard to the splitting of the Jordan in the days of Joshua, and it came to pass, when all the kings of the Amorites were beyond the Jordan westward, and all the kings of the Canaanites that were by the sea heard how that the Lord had dried up the waters of the Jordan from before the children of Israel, till they were passed over, that their heart melted, neither was there spirit in them any more, because of the children of Israel. Joshua 5:1. And even Rahab the prostitute said to Joshua's messengers, for we have heard now, the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you. Joshua 2:10. לא היה בם עוד רוח, ומה ישנך תקרא לו כמה עוד רוח באיש. The Gemara asks, what is different there in regard to the splitting of the Jordan, where the verse states, neither was there spirit in them anymore, and what is it different here, meaning in the case of Rahab, where the verse states, neither did there remain any more spirit in any man, Joshua 2:11. So, right, what's the difference between the time of Rahab and the time of neither was there any spirit anymore. And Yisro, I guess. Okay, next we're turning on to 116b, top of the page. Defilu actually nami lokashia. ומנה ידע אדם אמר, אין לך כל שר ונגיד שלא ברכה וזונה. The Gemara replies that Rachav used this phrase euphemistically to say that their fear was so great that their male organs would not even be able to stand. Let's put it that way. They couldn't stand. After they split the sea, they were so fearful they couldn't pop a woody. And even Rahab the prostitute said to Joshua's messengers, we have heard the Lord's judgment before you. Okay, so this is going to Rabbi Eliezer, who says that Yisro heard about the splitting of the sea, and Rahab heard it. Okay, so now we go into 116b, top of the page. Alright, basically she was a zoine, of very wide renown, and many people used to visit her. So she said that they were so fearful that they couldn't get ready for action because they were so afraid. The Gemara asks, how did Rahab know this? The Gemara replies, because the master said that you did not have a prince or ruler at that time who did not engage in intercourse with Rahab the prostitute. Amaru Bas Esir. Okay, we'll stop here. And we'll continue on with this very interesting Agadata about Rahab the Zunah.